What is up, adventurers, and welcome to a brand new ShawnSetGO video. Today we're going to be talking about Legion Remix, but let's address, of course, the elephant in the room. I'm going to have my arm bandaged for a little bit of time. Of course, I don't do IRL streams, but if I ever did, I'd show you like the tattoo conventions that I do frequently like to go to. This being one of them. I've gotten a few tattoos since starting to go to these, and this was the one I got this year. So a couple of things that I've always done is I always get tattoos, and I've stopped considering them to needing to be significant. That's just not something that's super important to me anymore, but this is just something I thought was really cool. And if you get the reference, you get the reference. If you don't, no big deal. But let's talk a little bit about what's going on with Legion Remix. Currently, this is the most recent post I saw. It says how Legion feedback seems to feel. And so in this, it says, we want Legion Remix to be like Mop Remix. And then of course, right below it says, you think you do, but you don't. Top comment says, yes, I don't understand the changing of the formula. Mop Remix was a massive, massive hit. Blizzard just has a hard on for changing stuff no matter what. It's like how they are perfect apps that are super functional and easy to use, but the devs cannot stop tinkering with them and inevitably making them terrible. So people are upset by this. The top comment says, Blizzard, hey guys, we just released this kooky new game mode. You get to be super overpowered and be the walking death machine you've always fantasized about. Not only that, but you get some really cool cosmetic and mount rewards. Players, yo, Blizzard is fantastic. We love this. Please do more of this. That was a ton of fun. Blizzard. And we took that personally. A lot of people are saying, I didn't know this, but there's a lot of, I guess, private servers that took that like level 254, 255 to heart. And that's something you could do as like just kind of like live out that super high power level thing. And they're semi-popular. I mean, for how long? I mean, we'll have to see. But still, it's something worth noting. I think overall, I don't know how this keeps on happening. So I know overall the Legion Remix feel of it. I can understand Blizzard's perspective of trying to reinvent the wheel in this case, in that they don't want there to be a group of people who go, well, this is just the same type of feel I got from Mop, just with Legion. And some people are okay with that, but I know that there's probably a group of people who would not want that. I think that for the most part, there's a lot of people who have interest in it, purely because Legion was either an expansion that you did and you got a lot out of it, or you missed entirely. It seems to be on one end of the spectrum one way or another. But memes aside, this post has a little bit more depth to it. And this one says, Legion Remix still has issues with scaling and rewards. And so I want to focus on the last part here, where it says that basically the fact of the matter seems to be that Blizz has pushed these changes onto the PTR, not to test high level scaling. We only have access to TOV and EN for raids, but rather to give the illusion that all will be well once Remix releases. I had a lot of fun in Mop Remix. I think the kinks were worked out over the 3 to 4 weeks. With power and bronze, felt like they were getting a decent place. I could hit my daily queues and feel like I was making progress. You need about 50 million artifact power to reach 999 on limits unbound. Taking basic napkin math with combine on fractive and mementos, you need a bit more than 556 combines to reach that level. It's a lot of numbers. We're going to explain a little bit of that to the best that I can in like a super simple, like just basic understanding. So long story short, Blizz is still isn't listening to testers or the community. The current power level available to test will be unattainable for the vast majority of players, and even should it become attainable to the gameplay, will be nowhere as fun because the power comes from verse scaling as opposed to mastery, haste, and crit as it was in Mop Remix. Frankly, I'm rather disheartened by the entire thing. This power trip was one thing that kept me playing Mop Remix. The mounts and sets were all bonuses that gave me something to shoot for. It seems that once again, Blizz is failing to acknowledge what the community enjoys in favor of reinventing the wheel and trying to focus us into gameplay they deem appropriate and fun in a limited time game mode. And it seems like the time gating on top of all of this is adding something to it all, which makes it feels like maybe something is incomplete or something is not being fully fleshed out before its release. And this is going to cause a lot of worry for folks. So first comment says, in the secrets Discord, note this, Secrets Discord, it was said by Joss Dev that they are still tuning eye level on Mythic Plus key rewards. Currently, it's around plus 63 plus 63 key for 740 gear, which is literally impossible to run. DPS start to get one shot around plus 44, and tanks are getting one shot around plus 47. The only reason people even made it to 47 is because of an exploit allowing them to party sync to a level 70. The other rewards are just clearly unfinished, not stated by the dev, but if you've done any testing, it's very obvious. Certain dungeons are bugged and giving many too little rewards. Giving many too little rewards. Too many or too little rewards. Court of Stars, for example, gives something like 8 times too much to loot when compared to other dungeons. 10 moats on live will also produce 740 gear because that's phase 1 to 4 cap. Moats scale to your item level. So if you're above the breakpoint to be getting 740 gear, then that's what you'll be getting. So and this comment says, I really wish developers would go back to posting on the forums instead of between 100 different discords so I wouldn't have to learn what kind of communication from someone on Reddit. This happens a lot where we're getting a lot of news articles on Wowhead. We're getting a lot of different posts in a lot of different locations. So everyone's understanding of what's happening is different. So my basic understanding of it, and feel free to tell me I'm 100% wrong on this, but my understanding of how it's going to work is that basically you're going to reach 740 item level by basically you're going to be farming gear and you're going to be upgrading it. Now, how you upgrade it, like so up to the point where you reach end game, you're going to have to basically all that gear unupgradable from my understanding. It's only the end game gear that you can get that you can upgrade from basically lowest item level to highest item level. You're going to start out with what is going to be your Eternus quest. Your Eternus quest will give you bronze. They'll give you things like power. They'll give you infinite knowledge, which is very important. Infinite knowledge essentially is like your multiplier. It's very important to farm early on. It's also going to give you bonuses and make it easier to farm later down the line. So very important to get infinite knowledge. I'm learning these terms. So the next thing is moats. The moats are going to be, like the comment said, it's going to be 10 moats, give you one random piece of gear, and then you need to unlock the next item level by having 4 to 5 pieces of that gear to get upgraded. It's basically your current eye level that you have, like within a certain breakpoint. That's what's going to unlock the next set. It's going to be sort of like stagger stepping breakpoints of eye level. So your gut feeling might be like, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to immediately jump into something like, gosh, what was one of the things? Like heroic world tier. Let's do heroic world tier. However, it's highly unadvisable because it's much easier, like say if you're a solo player, to go focus on things like treasure chest, world quests. Easy way to farm those. So if you need, and this is the big number right here. So if you need around 2,080 motes to go from the lowest eye level to the highest eye level, that's 52 upgrades. 52 upgrades, because it's about 4 to 5 for every 10 motes. So it's a lot, but the scaling is a lot. Now, yes, 100% it's true. A 63 keystone is what is required in order to get direct gear at the end of the dungeon and get 740. What's much more practical is to shoot around that 40 range, right? Right? Or we're saying shooting, but like just shooting as high as you can go. 40 is what people are typically going for. And then from there, use motes. So motes are the upgrade to that, but you're going to have, just like current WoW, where certain levels are going to give you certain item levels. Just like with, the champion veteran, like the whole hero upgrade system and how that works. Now, if you're thinking about how much motes you can get, mythics are basically like 30 per hour. Treasure chests are about the same for solos. Rare mobs are about 15 per hour. World quests about 12-ish, like 12-ish, 13-ish per hour. And then mythic raids are actually another good source, or raiding in general is another good source. They're about 16. So it's high, but of course lockouts exist. So most important thing is, as soon as you possibly can, try to get infinite knowledge. How do you get infinite knowledge? Well, I think it's world quests is one, and then empowered enemies. So that's the heroic tier. Not very lucrative as far as how quick it is. Broken Isle dungeons on normal. And then Emerald Nightmare, Trial of Valor, normal. So, oh, and then achievements. So farming those, working on solo grinding, and then your standard methods for getting your base level gear, and then upgrading from there. That's my understanding of it in a nutshell. To me, it's still overly complex. I'm sure the best ways to do it will be very complex, very strange. But that being said, the reason why I say all this is not just to be like, oh, you know, here's the news, here's like the guides. I'm not a guide giver. What I try to do is I go, hey, where are these scaling things not working? Hey, are we acquiring bronze at a good enough rate to where now people feel like all this grind to get eye level is worth it, and then the bronze, which is largely for the cosmetic items, are we getting paid off in a reasonable way? Like, does that make sense? And then also, how much are we integrating things like your talent trees, say for legendaries, and then your tier sets, like how are those like integrating well, and do they feel like it's fun to keep people invested? Because time gating is one of those things that I don't feel like is going to go away in current WoW for a while. They kind of know they have us by a hook with this whole Legion remix thing. And to be honest, the opinion for most people is that Legion is kind of all we got till midnight. And so this one says Legion versus midnight. It says only the light can save us now. And then the one below it is just Illidan, and it says your faith blinded you. Only we can save ourselves. And so a lot of people are in the boat that this comment says, I really don't like the day they've been treating today they've been treating the light in recent story, how they've been treating the light in recent stories. I like it when it was benevolent but blind, like in earlier stories. It wasn't ever benevolent, but that's what was so good about it. Anyone could wield it if they believed they were just. I mean, it could be used for good and evil, and that's why I loved it so much about it. The light had no morals. It did not care about ethics, and yeah. Then Blizzard tried to change that to be like a direct counter to the void, which is boring. Well, in fairness, the light is direct opposite of the void, but neither is inherently evil or good. I believe the whole point of the expansion is to refute the assumption that the light is a direct counter to the void. Nothing in recent lore suggests that assumption anyway. In all fairness, that was part of Illidan's character development. I don't see why a paladin would want to go through that development in a cinematic, although this is just discussion because I absolutely prefer Illidan's moment, LOL. Point is, a lot of people looking at Midnight with kind of a generic trope that I think Legion is supposed to be like a nostalgia grab to kind of divert people's attention toward for a little while, so we can get excited for this whole Light and Void sort of expansion that's coming our way. But let's look a little bit more at the scaling. Of course, if you don't want to look at more in-depth spoilers, like I said, like this is not necessarily spoilers about Legion, just kind of like what people are supposing is going to happen with this. So take it for what you will. But this specifically says Legion Remix has a scaling system for gear to bring you up to 740, but it'll take around an estimated plus 63 key loot to loot that level of gear. So like I said earlier, this one says correct. This post is slightly misleading in both directions. You need to do plus 63s consistently to get 740s at the end of every run, and you cannot do above plus 41s because that's the DPS health breakpoint where even passive damage ticks will instantly kill you. So this comment says, honestly, you'd probably be even more confused if you did the MOP remix because it was quite different. Because a lot of people are like, well, why did it just do it like MOP remix? Because MOP remix instead used bronze. This one says as a shared currency for everything. And that included upgrading the item level of your gear, which could upgrade even from the lowest item level all the way to the highest. Whereas the difference with Legion is that your gear is kind of like a mixed system of how it currently works in retail, where you have a base level of items, and as opposed to like you have greens, but it's most likely you don't want to upgrade greens. You probably want to work with blues because you start getting secondary, tertiary stats, and it starts getting a little bit better as a base piece of gear, right? So and then different ways of how the cloak works. And then it says, sounds like Legion Remix will be more traditional with most of the gear being dropped and you work toward getting higher item level. With the artifact weapons having a talent tree that you put a grinded out resource, not bronze, into that gives you buffs, 1 or 2 new abilities, and eventually stacking versatility. So it's sort of how we've worked with our new legendary cloaks and I guess belts and so on and so forth, in that there's more than just sort of socketing it. You can also have a talent tree that kind of works with it. Something to take into mind and consideration when thinking about this is that there is a lot of question marks. There's a lot being changed. My major concerns personally is that it does seem like there's a lot of question marks, even for the people that are testing this in depth to see how it is, that they're not quite sure how it's going to play out. It seems like scaling and rewards don't necessarily measure up. It does seem that people are able to break out some sort of strategy to figure out how things go, but I think there is a disconnect between what the developers want and what the players want. And this is a constant argument within the space. This is not the first time this has happened. Not saying they can't pull out a W with this, not saying people won't enjoy this overall. I just think the lack of transparency, the lack of uniformity of posts and articles is frustrating, because I can't jump in to understand what's going on. And I feel like we're all going to go into this, look up a guide, and we're like, all right, we're just going to carve straight through it. It's either going to be super fast and then just we're done with it, sort of like getting 3K IO and just bouncing for the rest of it, or it's going to be super tedious. They're going to fix it like a month into it, and then so many people are going to be burned out on it, or people are just going to be done with it. They just don't feel like doing it. They're going to go with solo farming routes and then just move on. So that's my problem with it overall. I think that the mythic scaling and how things max out are the problems on the horizon, or I guess on the horizon post-release, right? Because people aren't going to be there immediately, but I can't imagine it won't be too long before people are actually complaining about being in that position and going, why wasn't this dealt with then? So being a solutions-based channel, what do I think that are the ways to fix this? I think the most important thing to do is to really look at the breakpoints that people are going to be focusing on the most, and that is the second to highest and the highest. It's the way it works currently in retail WoW, is we break it down to those most important parts. So I think what we should do is really harken in on our on those sections being the most crucial to be fixed, and really narrow down what's the problem with the scaling. I think that most people have an understanding of what's going on below that because it's able to be accessed. But I think beyond that is what people are concerned with. And for the most part, it seems like, to my understanding, as someone who hasn't done a whole remix experience, it seems like for the most part, you're going to scale to ridiculous levels. So it should be a section. I think this should be inevitably we should see or I guess our vision. Our goal is for everyone to be ridiculously overpowered and to be absolutely steamrolling stuff. So really, once we get to that point, it just needs to be fun. If it was tedious and overwhelming up until that point, though, are we really going to enjoy it? So I leave that with you. Please, of course, like, comment, subscribe to the page while you're at it. If you enjoyed the video, if you have any suggestions or things that you've experienced that you're like, I think this would be a cool thing, let me know in the comments. Of course, if you haven't already, we have been looking to prove ourselves in a Makara tournament that will be upcoming pretty soon. So if you haven't already, we're going to be participating in a WoW Classic Makara 1v1. It's gonna be a 4-hour stream that we're gonna be doing this. We might do some practice runs ahead. I might just kind of wing it and do it from there. Of course, if you have any tips, recommendations, suggestions, we'll be live on stream, and we'll appreciate all tips and suggestions in the stream as well. So please do join us. It's gonna be on the 27th, I believe, at 10 a.m. PST. 10 a.m. PST, I believe is the time frame. So until next time, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.